People say that drinking too much alcohol is bad for you, but Jason Tyler thinks that the third beer he had that night saved him. Jason watched TV and drank beer while his wife Alexis was on a business trip. This is something he didn't do very often when Alexis was home. The third beer must have made him pee a lot because he normally slept through the night without waking up, but this time he had to go to the bathroom. He looked at his nightstand clock and saw that it was 2 in the morning. One of his neighbor's dogs was barking. It was likely the Klein's dog since they kept it in a kennel outside. What was the point of having a pet if you had to keep it locked up all the time? The fight between Sal and Mary Klein might have been just one of many. Jason was sitting on the edge of the bed to stretch his hurt knee when he heard something else strange. He thought the back door was being opened too slowly, unless his ears were deceiving him. He felt a chill go down his spine. He quickly went to the closet and hid his old Winchester over the door because he wanted to be safe. He learned what he knew about being a police officer from his father, who was one in the 1970s. People were told to look around in the chamber when they went into a building late at night. The sound is meant to scare away any possible bad guys. It's possible that Jason's dad has other plans, but in this case, it seemed like good advice. Jason tried his best to calm down, but he couldn't remember ever being this scared before. He went to the bedroom door and put the first of the 3 double-aught buckshells inside. He then yelled down the stairs, trying to look brave when he wasn't. "Hey, come on up. I have a surprise for you." Jason heard the screen door slam the next thing he knew. He ran to the bedroom and window in the back. At that very moment, he saw someone getting over the fence in the backyard. The night was clear, and there would be a full moon in 2 nights. Jason couldn't make out any features, but it was clear that a man was trying to jump the fence. But he dropped something. Was it a 9 times 19? It looked like that's what the man quickly put back in his pocket before jumping the fence. Now the dog next door was barking like crazy, and the Klein's back porch light went on. The light didn't shine bright enough to make out the person running down the alley, though. When Jason got back to his room, he picked up the phone. "What is the matter?" "Someone broke into my house, but they are now leaving and running away." "Are you okay?" "I agree, but I think the person is getting away. You might be able to catch them." The conversation between Jason and the dispatcher quickly became tense. Jason wanted the police to hurry up and catch the intruder, but the dispatcher said it might take a while because Jason wasn't in immediate danger anymore and there were other emergencies to take care of. When Jason asked sarcastically if those emergencies meant stopping for coffee and donuts on the way to his house, he knew he had gone too far. Sandy Mason sat in his car 2 miles away and tried to catch his breath. What went so wrong? Last week, he spent all week getting ready for last night. He looked around the area, planned where to park without drawing attention, and figured out the best way to get to and from Tyler's house. He knew everything about the dog next door. That's why he went down the alley at 2 a.m. just to make the barking seem normal for 3 nights. But now, not getting enough sleep was making it hard for him to think clearly and do well at work. Stupid. It wasn't easy to plan and carry out the perfect ending. Sandy's best chance to get rid of Jason Tyler was now. Sandy thought about how upset Alexis would be when she got back from her business trip and found out she was still married to that jerk. But Alexis wouldn't show it. She puts on too much of a show. Sandy has thought that Alexis wasn't interested in him for 6 months, ever since he started working for her. But he could see the signs. Sandy knew that part of her smile when she walked by his desk was just for him. All the work they did last night is now useless. Sandy could deal with Jason in other ways, but they would take too long, and Jason was ready to be with Alexis already. Sandy thought about the first time he saw Alexis as he rubbed his face in the car. She was in a meeting and was sitting next to him. A little of her thigh could be seen through her skirt when she sat down. She quickly pulled it back down. She smiled at him, put out her hand, and said, "Hi, my name is Alexis Tyler." That's it. Then, he saw her having lunch with Susan Oster in the break room last month. He asked to join them, and Alexis smiled and spoke in a sweet voice to say yes. Sandy could tell Alexis was talking to Susan, but she thought her words were meant for him. Alexis told Susan with a laugh, "Sometimes, Susan, I wish I were single like you. Jason has been hard to train for 20 years. This morning, he left the toilet seat up again, and I almost fell in. It was my mistake not to turn on the light." Susan told them about some bad dates she'd been on, and they all laughed. But Sandy got Alexis's underlying message. Jason was something she didn't want. Sandy thought back to the morning when she left her house key on her desk. It looked like an open invitation for him to copy it. He brought her the report on the Graves audit while she was waiting, but her keys were already there when he got there. His excuse to the front desk worker was that he had to make a quick trip to the hardware store to make a copy. The house key on her keychain was easy to find. It didn't take long to get the copy, but Alexis was already back from her meeting when he got back to the office. He could not just leave the keys on her desk. That looks like a bad idea. He came up with the idea of throwing the keys under Alexis' Honda near the driver's side door in the parking garage after some thought. It's fixed now. Sandy became less excited when he came back to the present and continued to fantasize. Just as he reached his peak, he was startled by headlights reflecting off of his rearview mirror. As a police car drove by, he slouched down. His heart rate had to calm down for 10 more minutes before he could drive home to his apartment. 2 police officers went to the Tyler home an hour after the 911 call to look into it and make a report. Officers Jones and Shepard were nice, but they seemed distant and didn't seem to care about Jason's situation. With flashlights, they checked the house and saw that the back door hadn't been tampered with. The police didn't believe Jason that he had checked all the doors before going to bed. When they were done with their report, they left through the front door. Officer Jones was joking with Officer Shepard about getting a donut and coffee, which made Officer Jones laugh and probably woke up any neighbors who were still sleeping. Jason couldn't fall asleep, so he made coffee and sorted papers for 3 hours. He called his wife at 7 a.m. to say good morning, but he didn't tell her about the break-in until she got home that night. She drove herself to the airport because her flight was at 6:30. He told his boss he wouldn't be coming into work by 8 a.m. and gave a reason. After that, he called the locksmith to change the locks and put in a few door alarms. Later, he and Alexis would talk about whether to put in a home security system. Since the locksmith was done before noon, Jason had to go to work for the rest of the day. Kevin Smith, Jason's boss, had already told everyone in the office about the break-in, so for the first hour, Jason took calls from worried coworkers. Things calmed down in the end, which let him concentrate and finish his work. Alexis stood at the door, angry that her key didn't work. This day was quickly getting worse because Sandy Mason wasn't doing her job right. Because of his bad audit report, she didn't need to go to Portland. She was going to tell the department manager about his mistakes on Friday. Mason didn't check his math twice before she left, so she was stuck in Portland. Luckily, Donald Graves had all the proof he needed to show that the Portland office was following financial rules. Alexis was glad that Donald don't mind her visit and that she got home earlier on the shuttle. Alexis tried to solve the problem by going to the back door, but her key didn't work there either, which made her feel a little scared. A few weeks ago, she and Jason watched Unfaithful, which showed how a similar situation turned out very badly. As a joke, Jason said he'd change the locks if she ever cheated. Now she had to deal with the first part of his joke, even though she hadn't done anything wrong. When Alexis tried to call Jason, she almost made it through before she was cut off. "What is going on, Jason? The locks at home won't accept my key." When Jason was caught off guard, he said the first thing that came to mind, which wasn't the best thing to do. "My mistake, Alexis. I thought your flight was at 6:30. Why does that matter when I can't get into the house? Why do you change the locks? I'm going to be home soon. I'm sorry. When I get there, I'll explain everything. Hold on, love. Please move quickly. Oh no, I need to go to the bathroom badly." Jason said sorry over and over as he quickly grabbed his keys and left, but Alexis had already hung up. Jason got home in the promised 20 minutes, even though he broke a few traffic rules. Alexis got out of her car just as he opened the front door. Even though she looked mad, she kissed him anyway and went inside. Jason went to the car and got her suitcase and briefcase. He poured Alexis's favorite ale and set it out for her inside. Alexis smiled back when she saw her husband with a humble smile and the peace offering. She kissed and hugged him. "Let it out now. What's wrong with the locks?" Jason told Alexis about the break-in and everything that had happened since then. She couldn't believe how close she had come to losing her love. She was crying just thinking about living without him. She said she was sorry for being angry on the phone earlier. Alexis didn't think twice about putting in a security system. "We are definitely going to get a security system. Katie is coming home from school next weekend, and I'm not going to put her safety at risk." Alexis made sure to stick to her new routine when she parked in the garage on Friday morning. She put her keyring in the side pocket of her purse before leaving. She made sure her keys were safe ever since she lost them last month. The last time, it took her more than an hour to find them with Susan's help. It was because she was in a hurry to get to her meeting in the morning that she lost them. Before Susan found them under the car, she looked under her desk and in the trash can. To keep her car safe, Jason taught Alexis how to use the button on the door to lock it. He had read that thieves could pick off key fob signals in parking lots. An online article talked about a similar situation in which a woman was rude in her car. The attacker might have hid in the back seat and caught her off guard. Before the attempted break-in, Alexis thought this was over the top, but now she sees why she should be careful. As Alexis walked by Sandy Mason's desk, she could feel his eyes on her. It made her feel cold. She didn't like something about him. Sandy had worked for the company for about 6 months. He was already sitting down and staring at her when she walked into the staff meeting. She had no choice but to sit next to him since there was only one seat available. He was so rude as to try to peek up her skirt, but she quickly fixed it. But then he looked at her chest instead. Instead of calling him out, she smirked and shook his hand to introduce herself. Sandy rudely cut Alexis off from Susan while they were talking in the break room a few weeks ago. They didn't want to tell him to leave, even though it made them feel bad. They didn't want to let him join them, but they soon realized he was listening in on their conversation. When they saw him grinning at Alexis's comment, they looked at each other nervously. Alexis was fed up and set up a meeting that afternoon with Hank Dolan, her boss. She was going to talk about Sandy Mason's lack of skills and possible harassment. We hoped that this would cause Sandy to be moved or even fired. Sandy was watching movies of Alexis Tyler on his big screen TV on Friday night. Sandy made the movies on his phone. The technology we have now is truly amazing. He was caught by a teacher in high school following a cheerleader up the stairs with his camera. Why did they wear their skirts so short if they didn't want him to film them? The vice principal was brave when he said he was filming in a public place and suggested the cheerleader set it up so it could be recorded. Sandy had no idea what was going on. Even though he was suspended for 3 days, he was kicked out when his website with more videos and photos was found. In no time at all did the police figure out how he got the video from the girls' locker room. Sandy was 15 years old when he was caught. Sandy's parents hired a great lawyer who fought hard to keep him from having to sign up as a criminal. Sandy only had to serve 3 years of a 3-year suspended sentence. When he turned 19, his arrest record was erased. Most of the pictures were taken at work. One of Alexis was taken in her cubicle in the conference room, and another was taken of her while she waited in line across the street at Starbucks. But one of his favorites was about to play, a 30-second clip of Alexis running down the park path in her running clothes. Now if only he could blur out her husband from the video. Sandy chose to spend Saturday looking for a program that could edit this movie so that Jason Tyler's picture would not be in it. But if Jason Tyler weren't alive, there would be no need for the program. He would be able to take as many movies as he wants with Alexis when they're together. In the next part of the movie, Sandy gets angry, which almost takes away from his enjoyment. He forgets to move the drone out of the Tyler yard while he is thinking. At that very moment, Jason Tyler walks out of the house brandishing a magnum and aiming it at the drone. Sandy acts quickly and moves the controls just in time to stay safe. Sandy almost reports Jason for breaking FAA rules, which say you can't shoot at a drone even if it's taking pictures of your property, but she doesn't. He's not sure if telling on Jason would bring him back. Sandy cleans up and thinks about the afternoon after the movie is over. What a wonderful woman. Sandy finds out too late that his Graves audit report wasn't very good. Most of the time he looked over the Portland office books, his mind was somewhere else. Because Alexis tried to keep Mr. Dolan safe, Sandy got away with just a warning. She must have flown to Portland to make things better with Graves and keep Sandy from getting in trouble with their boss. He will get back to work on Monday morning to avoid more trouble. He would miss spending time with Alexis a lot if he lost his job. He will think about what to do next with Jason Tyler before Monday. Alexis and Jason were getting ready for a run on Saturday morning. Alexis had to let off some steam. She was mad at her boss for being weak. Jason paid close attention as Alexis talked about everything. I still can't believe Hank just warned that jerk. Because Mason messed up, my whole week was a waste. When I told Hank about the harassment, he told me to talk to HR about it. Jason knew when to keep quiet and understood the problems women face at work, especially someone as pretty as Alexis. He thought he was lucky to be married to her. She was loyal and beautiful. She got back to the shape she had before she got pregnant 6 months after Katie was born. After a year, you would never have known she had a baby. Jason talked about their trip to the Bahamas, which was their first trip together after Katie was born. When they got to Miami, they flew to Nassau and then sailed there. 6 days of happiness in heaven. Jason was shocked when Alexis showed him her new belly button piercing. On that trip, he saw Alexis lay in the sun without a top on for the first time, which he will never forget. Alexis started to calm down after Jason was done stretching and they were ready to go for a run. They went to the park, which was about a half-mile away and had a beautiful trail that led to the water. Down at the northern end of the park, there was a hill with 290 steps going up it. They could run the whole way without stopping on good days. Jason and Alexis chose to walk the last mile on their way back. They were tired from all the stress of the week. Jason saw a guy sitting on a bench who looked like he was talking on his phone. The angle of the picture made Jason think of times he had seen creeps filming topless women on beaches. When they walked by the man, Jason brought it up to Alexis, but she was talking about Katie's coming visit and didn't hear him. Alexis knew the man when she turned around to look again. Oh my God. Yes, that's Sandy Mason. What? The person you said was making you feel bad? Why does he have a camera on us? I felt like something was wrong with him. Should I go back and talk to him? What should you do? We need to take his phone to prove that he is filming us while he's in a public park. This will be part of my report to HR on Monday. Girl, I want you to be more careful and alert. This guy is not trustworthy. Take out the mace spray I gave you. Do it without any doubts. Alexis knew Jason was right, even though she didn't like the idea. It made her feel even worse than before. Jason didn't tell Alexis this, but he knew the man sitting on the park bench from somewhere else. While Jason knew the police couldn't do much about someone using their phone on a bench, he had other ideas. As soon as he got home, he called the investigation firm his brokerage used and asked the owner to call him back right away or by Monday morning at the latest. Alexis talked to Clyde Walker from HR on Monday about her worries, such as Sandy Mason filming in the park on Saturday. So Clyde told her that they couldn't do anything about it right away, but that he would tell Sandy on Tuesday not to pay attention to female employees too much, because that could be seen as harassment. Are you going to tell him I spoke up? Alexis, I won't tell anyone, I promise. For a warning, that's fine. We might have to show the signed complaint if things get worse. That's what the lawyer will want to see if he hires one. We hope that a warning is enough to make him behave differently. I'll be sure to follow up. Alexis thought that Sandy would change her behavior and stop causing problems after the meeting. Being raised by a mother who was very kind taught Alexis to always see the good in people. Her mother thought that everyone's bad behavior had to have a reason. She couldn't imagine that some people could just be mean. Alexis always tried to follow her mom's advice. As a high school student, she tried to be graceful by being captain of the cheer squad and homecoming queen. However, people like Sandy Mason tried her patience and morals. Since the first time they met 6 months ago, Alexis felt uneasy whenever she saw him in the department. Jake met with Dave Phillips, owner of Phillips Investigations. At 11 a.m. Dave quickly set up this meeting for Monday morning because of Jason's message over the weekend. He knew how important it was to act quickly. Dave, I need you to find out everything about this Mason guy. Where does he come from? Where does he come from? Is he a danger? Alexis said that he has been with her department for 6 months and that she doesn't know much about his personal life. A lot of people have tried to get close to him but have failed. Dave wrote down what Jason told him as he spoke. He looked up and said, I'll call our lawyer right away and have them get in touch with Alexis's HR department. Because of her formal complaint and what happened on Saturday, they will have to give information about Mason. No will not be an answer from our lawyer. If not, we'll think about going to court. We will look into Mason's past more deeply because I am not sure how thoroughly the company checked him out. Thanks, Dave. You know how important this is to me. Our house was just broken into not long ago, and now this. I'm scared and need answers. Take it as done. We'll get to work on it today. I'll give this job to one of our best people, Dwayne Larson, when I have time this week. We'll find out what you need to know. How about calling the police? We'll let them know when we have something solid to say. An odd-behaving coworker who has been seen in a public park a few times is all we have right now. We should talk to Mason right now about what we know. He might hide and be more careful if we do. Do you know what just came to mind? A drone flew over our property a few weeks ago and stayed there while Alexis lay in the sun. Is it possible that Mason has a drone? I'll look into it. The FAA keeps track of some of the bigger drones. We are going to look into that. Please call me on my cell phone if you think of anything else, even if it's something small that didn't seem important before. If we have to call the police, every bit of information helps. Also, would it make you feel better if we hired Alexis a bodyguard? We should wait on that for now. One thing that doesn't make sense is why Mason would break into our house when Alexis wasn't there. He should have known she was in Portland. Yes, you're right. It doesn't make sense. But because I work with these people, I know that most of them do stupid things. There may be no link between the break-in and the stalking. For now, we'll keep them linked until we learn more. Thanks, Dave. I like how quickly you got to this and how you paid attention to our concerns. What else would you expect? You're more than a customer. The two of you have known each other for a long time. After that, Jason and Dave got up and shook hands. Jason then left Dave's office and walked down the street to his own. Jason became more aware of what was going on around him. He even looked at the reflections in store windows as he walked by. Dave picked up the phone as soon as he saw his friend leave. Alice, could you please get Dwayne to come see me? Thanks. Sandy Mason became more and more upset and angry. Early Tuesday morning, he was called into HR and told that a woman in his department had made a serious complaint about possible offense. Susie Oster had to be it because she was jealous of his relationship with Alexis. He said she would pay for it. Sandy was more worried about how to deal with Jason Tyler, though. When he tried to break into the Tyler house but failed almost a week ago, he still hadn't thought of a better plan. It was too dangerous for him to go back inside, especially since he saw a new ADT sign there. He thought about all of his plans to kill Jason, but there was always a chance that he would be caught. Is it worth getting rid of Jason if he ends up in jail and can't marry Alexis? Sandy was scared of going to jail because it made him remember how close he was to getting in trouble in high school. He then had a new thought. He could frame Jason for a serious crime that would get him a long prison sentence instead of killing him. But he would have to do something really bad for Alexis to leave him. What kind of crime could do that? Sandy was thinking about his problem in his cubicle when he saw Alexis's reflection in the screen. The answer came to him all of a sudden. He would be sure to get divorced from Alexis if he planned the death of Tyler's daughter and blamed Jason for it. He wouldn't have to deal with Jason's kid either. Sandy thought to himself with a smirk, I need to think about this some more. Sandy thought about this new plan and decided it was time to get back at Susan. He used a fake name to sign up for the online dating service Susan had told him about. Mr. Sam Martin sent her a message asking to meet soon, and she replied within 30 minutes. Sandy smiled and leaned back in his chair, happy with his plan. He then turned his attention back to his work. Susan checked out the Eugene office for the first half of the week. They didn't get to see each other again until Thursday afternoon. She talked about what happened in the park on Saturday and at the HR meeting on Monday morning. Susan couldn't help but notice Alexis looking around the cafe before she spoke. She was shocked by what happened in the park, but not by HR's lack of action. Most HR guys didn't have any guts. Alexis asked Susan about her date last weekend when she realized she was taking over the conversation. Another online date that didn't work out. We both knew by the end of the night that it wasn't going to work out even though he was nice. Alexis felt sad when she heard Susan's story. Susan's first marriage ended when she caught her husband cheating on her twice. That helped a little, but he got caught with his secretary again. She blew the whistle to try to make him like her. Best of luck, sweetheart. Anyway, I've been talking to a guy who seems nice since Tuesday night. We're going to get together soon. He has to finish a project at work first, so it might be in about a week. Alexis tried to sound good. That's great. You'll be happy one day with the right guy. You deserve it. In her mind, Alexis thanked her lucky stars that she wasn't Susan. Even though there was tension, the week at the Tyler home went by pretty smoothly. The security system was set up and works thanks to Dave Phillips's connections. Katie was going to go home on Friday, after taking her last final for the summer quarter on Thursday. Katie would be home for 3 weeks before going back to school for the fall quarter. This made Alexis and Jason very happy. They were both off work for 2 weeks to spend time with Katie at their cabin on Lake Wenatchee in eastern Washington. They planned to hike and fish for 2 weeks. Katie's boyfriend would be coming to visit during the second week. Alexis hoped that their relationship wasn't too serious since Katie was only 20 years old. Jason, on the other hand, was looking forward to talking to him. Katie knew that Jason was looking out for her because they loved her, so she didn't mind when he was protective. Jason stopped by Dave Phillips' office on his way home from work on Friday. Kevin was told by Dwayne what he had found so far. Sandy's real name is Sanders Austin Mason, and he was born in Vancouver, Washington, 28 years ago. He used to work for Exxon in Houston. We tried to find out why he quit Exxon, but it was like trying to break into the Pentagon. As an adult, he has never been arrested or convicted in Texas or anywhere else. This is where things get tricky. Mason may have a record from when he was younger. He went to a public high school in Vancouver as a freshman and sophomore, but the yearbook for the following year doesn't list him as a student. We also looked at private schools in the area, but there was no record of him going there. At that time, his parents lived in the same house, but he wasn't going to any nearby schools. We used the yearbook and a local phone book to get in touch with a few of his old classmates. No one said they were his friends, but 2 classmates remembered hearing that Sandy Mason was taking pictures of himself in upskirts. There was even a story that the girls' locker room had a hole in it that was never proven. He doesn't show up again until he's 19 and in college. It's likely that a good lawyer would be able to get his juvenile record erased unless it was for a crime. We didn't find any of those, so it seems likely that he wasn't involved in any crime. Jason let go of a breath he hadn't realized he had been holding during Dave's explanation. I guess that's a little comforting, but what should we do next? We'll talk about that soon. You should know 2 more things, though. First, Mason does have a drone. It's a high-end one with a good camera. Someone who lives in the building across the street saw him with it on the roof. That's it, he's gone. He probably went back to his apartment to control it and watch through the camera. He only goes back up to the roof when the drone lands. Is that okay? Yes, it's not clear yet whether drones are legal or not. The federal government and our state legislature have not kept up with how quickly drone technology is changing. As always, the feds were caught off guard. Okay, you brought up 2 points. What is the other one? Better to worry about is the second piece of information. He has a 9mm Glock. Do you know what Magnum is? I know enough about it to spot it. What I saw the night of the break-in was hard for me to describe. It was too dark and far away. Does Mason have the right to do it? No, but most criminals don't bother to get a permit to carry a gun on their person. Have you thought about taking it? It's not going to happen. Alexis is scared of guns with mags. I'm lucky that she lets mine in the house. Actually, I wouldn't tell anyone to carry if they aren't good with guns. If you aren't trained and ready, too many things could go wrong. I know you got Alexis a handheld mace container. There's a chance you and your daughter could each get one. Now, to answer your first question, I think you should hire a law firm in Texas to get to Exxon's records, though it might cost a lot. If Exxon doesn't want to do it, it could cost us a few $1,000s or more. But if we have the right lawyers, we can get a judge to order Exxon to give us Mason's personnel files. If we can get an order from a judge, it can protect us from Mason's possible countersuit. What do you think? Jason didn't think twice. Let's do it. Another 30 minutes were spent by Dave, Dwayne, and Jason talking about the specifics of the investigation. Dave brought up the idea of hiring a bodyguard again. Since Dwayne was going to be in Texas, he couldn't help, but Dave had other options. Jason still didn't think it was necessary, but on his way home, he stopped at an outdoor store and bought 2 pepper spray canisters. He couldn't help but smile when he got home that night and saw Katie's car in the driveway. It would be great to have her home for 3 weeks. His big hug from Katie as he walked in caught his attention, but she had a serious look on her face. When were you going to let me know about the break-in? Katie spoke with wet eyes and didn't wait for him to answer. I don't know how I'd handle something happening to you or Mom. I want you to promise to stay safe. Promise. Jason knew Katie was getting too emotional. He looked over her shoulder and saw Alexis standing nearby, also crying. His first thought was about how he would deal with the next few weeks with both women being so upset. He was then thankful to have 2 kind women in his life. Could things get better? During the hug, he promised to do everything in his power to protect his family. There was a lot of talk that night. Alexis barely had time to eat as she talked about the past semester and how great the guy she was dating, Charles Owen, was. As a senior, he was majoring in engineering and was in ROTC. Soon, he would be a 2nd lieutenant in the Army. Jason was getting ready for the young man's visit while he listened. He thought he might soon meet his future son-in-law. Katie asked what happened with the break-in. This was the moment Jason had been dreading ever since he met the police. He didn't want Alexis or Katie to be scared, but he also didn't want them to think the danger wasn't real. Jason told what happened during the break-in, including how he fought the thief with the Magnum. Katie looked at her mom and laughed when she heard Jason yelling down the stairs because she knew how her mom felt about guns. Come on up. I have a surprise for you. Dad, that's so funny. Is that something from one of your Bruce Willis movies? Hey, I don't know. It felt right at the time. It worked, though. After 2 seconds, I heard the screen door slam. Thank goodness. I've never shot anything before. That's something I don't think I would have done. The last thing Jason said made the dining room quiet for a moment. Alexis calmed things down by telling Katie and Jason to clear their plates while she put the dishes in the dishwasher. One person could be on at a time. Katie and Jason both believed it was a good thought. Each of them said something that didn't make Alexis feel bad. Let's walk around the block, Katie. As they walked, Jason started to talk. This Mason guy might be more dangerous than I told you. I didn't want to worry your mom too much. Next week, one of the detectives will look at Mason's old home and place of work. Before your mom goes back to work in 2 weeks, we hope to learn more about this creep. I got your mom to agree to carry Mace when she's in the parking garage by herself. I also have one for you. Just in case, I hope you'll think about carrying it. Katie was now going to say something she hadn't planned to her mom. Dad, I hope Charles doesn't make you feel bad, but he taught me how to use a Magnum. My gun is a 9mm semi-auto and I have a permit to carry it concealed. Charles and I go to the range, and I'm pretty good. The mace is yours to keep. My Smith & Wesson will stay with me. Jason was shocked for a moment, but he was able to answer. Where is it now? I am scared to think what your mom would say if she found a tool in the house or cabin. It's in my bedroom and has a trigger lock to keep it safe when I'm not there. I have the key on me. It's not fair to keep a secret from your mom, but I'll figure out how to tell her about having it in the house. For now, let's keep this quiet. Sandy kept coming up with reasons not to kill Katie Tyler the more he thought about it. To begin, Jason's framing had to be impossible to pull off, which was hard. Also, Tyler and Alexis would not get Jason's life insurance if he lived, and Jason could spend a lot of money on lawyers for the trial. Sandy was counting on that money to start a new life since they would lose everything. If Sandy had enough money, he could enjoy life and not have to work too hard. No, Katie wasn't going to be killed and Jason wasn't going to be blamed. Going back to Plan A, Jason. Do not complicate things. Go up to him on the street one night and act like you're trying to rob him. Then, take him out. Sandy and Jason had nothing to do with each other, so why would the police think Jason was guilty? Sandy was being too smart. He put gang graffiti on 2 buildings on Saturday night to make sure the police thought the murder was a theft. On Sunday, he was happy as he watched the local news. Sandy smiled as the reporter talked about how gang activity was on the rise. She was glad that it was a slow news day. The next week's Tuesday night, Susan Oster left the lounge a little less sober. Susan didn't think she was too drunk to drive home. The day had been hard, and the evening was no better. Sam Martin, her online dating date, didn't show up to the lounge for their first meeting. Sue was so mad that she couldn't eat, and the 2 Cosmos really hurt her. She opened the door to her car and felt a nice-smelling cloth on her face. 2 arms grabbed her and threw her into the back seat before she passed out. She woke up to find Sandy Mason staring at her from the space between the front seats of her car. She tried to move, but the shoulder strap and the ties around her arms and legs made it hard. As her eyes got used to the dark, they focused on the tool Mason was holding out to her. "Sandy, what are you doing? Allow me to leave." Susan struggled to speak as she realized how bad things were. "Susan, what was your point when you lied about me at work?" Mason's tone of voice was tense. "I didn't. I never said bad things about you." "What do you mean by that?" Susan became more confused. Don't lie to me. I know it was you who told HR that I was making you feel bad." "I didn't. Alexis was the one who told you to stop following her around." Susan yelled when she realized what she had done wrong. "You're not telling the truth. Alex really likes me. We're going to get married after Jason is gone." "Does Alexis love you?" "What?" Susan was shocked and said, "I didn't know that. Just let me go, please. I'm going to keep this a secret." Susan begged, "I didn't report you to HR." To clear his mind, Mason got out of the car and walked into the empty parking lot. When he came back 10 minutes later, the dome light was out, leaving them in the dark again. "Okay, I'll let you go, but you have to answer my questions and promise not to tell anyone about what happened tonight. Get it?" Sandy laid out the rules. Susan just nodded. She was scared and hoped that talking would help her stay alive. She was in a bad way. Sandy used to want Susan to suffer, but now he felt sorry for her. She got caught up in all of this. She had to leave anyway, but he chose to knock her out first. Sandy went outside, got chloroform, and soaked a cloth in it. "We now had the information he needed." Susan told him not to because she could smell it. He didn't listen to her pleas and waited until she passed out. "I'm sorry, Susan." He put the rag in a bag, taped it around her neck, and then waited outside for 10 minutes. Sandy picked up Susan's body and carried it up the trail to a cliff, hoping that animals would hide any evidence. He then meant to leave the country, leaving a trail of hate for Alexis and her family. Sandy laughed to himself as he drove Susan's car to the address she gave him. A cabin? It was even better than his first plan. Dwayne Larson couldn't get to Houston until Tuesday because he had to go to court that day. The Seattle lawyers suggested the first law firm in Houston, but they couldn't take the case because they already had one that was busy. Dwayne was upset because he thought the lawyers in Seattle might have known this before he flew down. Luckily, he was sent to Schuler and Simmons by another Houston firm. George Schuler agreed to help him with meetings at Exxon. After 2 hours, Dwayne sat down at a quiet table across from Grimley's assistant, Elaine Stewart. "There are important things about Sandy Mason that aren't in the file, but I know your lawyer is working on getting one. Don't you think you might get in trouble for meeting with me?" "Not at all. Mr. Grimley really wanted me to meet with you. He is good. He can't do everything legally, but he'll do everything he can to help you protect that woman up north. Mr. Grimley thought we were just putting off the problem when we let go of Mason. A company from Seattle called to ask for a reference. He did everything right to warn them, but it looks like they didn't get it. The file has records of the 2 warnings Mason got for bothering women in his department. One woman even told him he was touching himself in a bad way during a meeting. Grimley was about to fire Mason when he quit without giving much of a reason. After a week, we got a call from the Houston police who were responding to a request from the Mexican police. They wanted to talk to Mason because they were looking into the death of a woman in the desert. He quickly left Texas. Once Grimley got the call from Seattle, he called the police. But we haven't heard from them since until your office called us last week. Do you know what the Mexican police did to look into the woman's death? Okay, that's the scary part. My brother-in-law is a police officer, so Grimley asked me to check without being asked. This is what I found. The woman was from Mexico, but she was in Texas on a work visa. It looks like she met Sandy Mason on a dating site. Her friends thought they dated for a short time before she broke up with him. They didn't understand why she was found in Mexico because she only crossed the border to see family on Sundays and always came back before dark. The Mexican police wanted to talk to Mason because records showed that he came into the country not long before a farmer found the body of the woman. No record of her entry into Mexico was made. They asked Houston PD to question Mason because there wasn't enough proof to bring him back. They did it once, right before Mason quit. He wasn't there when they tried again. That was the last thing we heard after telling them what we knew. Their main concern was with drug gangs in Mexico, so it wasn't a top priority. However, my brother-in-law told me that Mason will be arrested if he goes back. Dwayne and Miss Stewart were done with lunch. After she gave them some more information, they went their separate ways. Before calling Jason, Dwayne called his boss in Seattle. The boss tried to reach Jason but got his voicemail. Thursday, Sandy drove by the Tyler cabin and thought about how unfair life is and when he would get lucky. He thought that either Alexis or the Tyler girl wasn't home because one of the cars from last night wasn't there. He had planned to do something the night before, but the motion lights turning on as he got closer to the cabin changed his mind. Sandy walked by while Jason Tyler was cutting the grass. Sandy knew there were cabins nearby because she used Google Earth and saw that no one else was around. This proved that the cabins were not a threat. After leaving his car at the state park, he got on his mountain bike to blend in better and get less attention. Sandy thought about how things got easier as he parked. After the first victim, he felt sick, but after each one after that, it bothered him less. He was especially mad at the Mexican woman for ending their date quickly. He threw her body away in Mexico and left town after the Houston police came to check on him. As he got closer to Tyler's cabin, he didn't hesitate like he had in the past. He thought, I'm going to enjoy this. Because of the noise from the mower, Jason thought he heard a scream. He stopped and looked out the cabin window to see two people. In a flash, he turned off the mower, ran across the lawn, and ran inside. When Katie got to the driveway of the cabin, she knew something wasn't right. The mower being left out, which didn't happen very often, made her suspicious, and her mother's stalker warnings made her even more so. She hesitated when she saw that her parents weren't at the door, which was different from how they usually greet each other. She was wondering how the stalker could find them. Even though she thought of a simple reason, like her parents' need for privacy, she couldn't get rid of the feeling, so she quietly armed herself with a gun that Charles had taught her how to safely use. She went into the cabin slowly. Inside, she found a very bad truth. A scary stranger had her parents pinned down with a gun. I told you to come on over and join the party. Your mom has been playing with me and making me think she likes me when she was really just making fun of me with Susan Oster. Susan is no longer laughing, and your mom will soon stop too. Welcome inside. Katie just stood there and thought. She remembered what Charles had taught her. Mason was in her sights, but she knew she couldn't shoot fast enough to save her mother. Charles taught her that life wasn't like in movies. The hostage is shot first in real life. Mason got Katie's hesitation all wrong. Are you scared? Frozen with fear? It's going to be even more fun than I thought. I was going to have some fun with your mom before ending it by letting her watch me off of you and your dad. I might play with you first, though, now that I see how cute you are. Mason made fun of the fact that your dad wasn't as brave without his tool. I have something for you. He turned back to Katie and laughed in a scary way. I'll also let your parents watch just because I can. With bullets in their knees, they are still alive but can't move. Mason got off the stool and sat down next to the couch, planning to shoot at the knees. He laughed. He went after Jason first because he thought he was the most dangerous. But from this point of view, he couldn't watch Katie and her parents at the same time. Katie saw a chance for herself. Katie caught Mason's attention for a moment when she dropped the bag and picked up the tool. It took her mind off of things just enough. Katie's eyes were on her S&W 9mm Shield semi-automatic at that very moment. When Mason realized what was going on, his eyes got really big. He was too slow to swing his Glock at Katie. Katie pulled the trigger. She didn't think about how terrible it was to kill someone. Instead, she focused on what she had been practicing for months. Afterward, she prayed that killing him was the only way to keep her family safe. The first bullet hit Mason right in the chest, but he didn't have time to see it because he heard a second shot. Because Katie remembered what Charles had taught her, she fired 2 more shots very quickly. Mason fell to the ground lifeless in less than 2 seconds. Jason jumped in and kicked the Magnum away, but Mason had already left. Jason hadn't stopped doing what he was doing out of fear. Later, Jason asked himself if he was brave and manly enough to have talked to Mason earlier, before Katie got home. He thought about what had happened and wondered if he had seen Katie coming with her Magnum. Did that make him wait to act? Would he have done something sooner to keep his daughters safe? He knew the truth deep down. Just before Katie dropped the bag, Jason was getting ready to lunge at Mason in a last-ditch effort to disarm him, even though he knew it would be very unlikely to work. It looked like fate stepped in. The bag dropped right before he moved. Jason was glad that his daughters were safe for now. He gave Alexis a tight hug and then asked Katie to join them. Katie made sure that her gun was empty before she joined the hug. Alexis saw what Katie had done and knew what she had done. The shock began to wear off. "Where did you get that tool?" Jason and Katie both looked embarrassed before Jason said, "Honey, we'll talk about it later. Thank goodness our daughter knows how to use it. Charles helped save our family, and I can't wait to thank him." As soon as Tyler called 911, state troopers and county sheriffs started showing up. It looked like the situation was clear. Katie did what she did to protect herself. After another 30 minutes, Mason's car was found, and many questions were answered by what was inside. But it also linked Mason to 2 murders that haven't been solved in Florida and Mexico. It shed light on what happened at the Tylers. Susan's body wasn't found for 2 more days, and Mason had kept things from all 3 endings. Also, videos and photos of hundreds of women who didn't know what was going on were found on thumb drives that were locked inside a suitcase. The dates on these pictures are from the last 12 years. Days after that, Jason drank a beer on the back porch and watched the moon rise over the lake. There were a lot of stars visible in the dark sky, and as Jason looked up, a shooting star went by the Milky Way. He remembered making a wish on a falling star as a child, but he didn't feel the need to do that now that his wish had already come true. As he looked back at the cabin, where his wife, daughter, and Charles were sitting at the table in the dark, he silently thanked them. Charles had already come that morning, and Jason liked the young man right away. Charles knew a lot, treated Katie with respect, and was clearly in love with her. Throughout the evening, Jason's protective attitude weakened. Alexis found this amusing, pointing out how different Jason's behavior was from his behavior on Katie's previous dates. Jason even agreed to Charles's offer to teach him how to use a Magnum properly at the nearby range. Alexis turned down the same training for now, but she did agree to let them have a tool in the house, even though she wasn't ready to use one herself. She thought that maybe her view would change over time, but for now she thought it was a small victory that everyone agreed that making magnums illegal would only give criminals more power. Jason drank his last beer on the back porch and felt thankful. Alexis showed up with a couple more long-neck bottles. She gave Jason one and then joined him. Jason drank a sip from his bottle and said, "That's 4 beers for me tonight. It's likely that I'll have to get up at least once during the night." Alexis told him, "If you go back to sleep, please wake me up." "When was the last time we stayed up late?" Jason smiled, but the screen door opened again before he could answer. After coming out, Charles and Katie went to the lake. They said, "We're going out in the rowboat and might go for a swim." Jason and Alexis both spoke at the same time. "Watch out for things." She laughed and looked into Jason's eyes, telling him, "I like him, and I can see you do too. It's good to have him here. It will take Katie's mind off of what happened last week. Even though Sandy Mason deserved to die, it's too bad that our daughter had to do it. She had some bad nights over the weekend. We were in the kitchen just now, and Katie was talking about how she felt. Charles made her feel better and let her cry. That young man is much more mature than his years. Jason, how did we get so lucky? I keep thinking about Susan and how sad her life was. Alexandries thought, she was such a nice woman, and her ending was so sad that it makes me cry." Jason knew there was no easy answer, so he put his arm around Alexis and comforted his wife in silence.